This is a recording of You Gentiles by Maurice. This book is in the public domain. Recording by Grips. Chapter 10. The Games of Science. Illusions change the instruments of their expression, but they remain the same illusions. Religions change their gods, but they remain the same religions. The atheist Gentile has made science his god, but it has not changed his religion. In the scientific field, the atheist Gentile tells me, quote, "We will find world unity. In science there is no room for the subconscious, and it is the subconscious which dictates the eternal enmities. Place your relations on a conscious basis, and you may have differences to be adjusted, but not enmities." Unquote. The solution of the Jewish-Gentile problem, as of every instinct problem, lies in the pursuit of truth through science. All other problems are not really problems, but purely technical matters, to be settled by the application of mathematics. And as we learn to make this distinction between instinct problem and technical task, the greater is the discredit into which the former falls, the clearer is the attention which we bring to the latter. The greatest contribution of science to human advance has been the opening of paths to our free intelligence, so that the unconscious and subconscious mind, with its inheritance of the beast, might fall into desuetude. The truth alone will save us, and in science is truth. I do not wish to go into an examination of the nature of truth. I do not wish to question the validity of scientific truths. I am ready to admit that scientific truths are truths in the accepted sense of the word, or if there are mistakes, if this or that scientific theory is wrong, I will not argue that therefore the scientific method is wrong, or that science itself does not go nearest to the truth. My contention is that science, the examination of facts in literal terms, is quite irrelevant to the spiritual problems of man. Science is accurate, but its accuracy is pointless for spiritual purposes. The truths which are unveiled by the scientific method, and which it is the special aptness of this method to unveil, do not matter to anybody. Science teaches us that the earth goes around the sun, rather than the sun around the earth. Does it really matter which it is the case? Science teaches us that the occasional retrogression effect in the observed motion of the planets is not due to, quote, cycle in epicycle, orb in orb, unquote, but to changes of perspective produced along the plane of the ecliptic during the revolutions of the planets around the sun. Well, what of it? It has revealed the fact that certain diseases are due to the action of minute parasites, that there is a marvelous structural parallel between man and the beasts, that forms of energy are interchangeable, that the earth is extremely old, that there were other forms of life on the planet before us, that we are merely a point in space. All this is accurate, but is it of any importance? I ignore, of course, the obvious advantages which are supposed to accrue from the application of these facts. Quote, the conquest of nature, unquote, as it is bombastically called, though even these advantages are vitiated by our inability to exploit them decently. It is not to these advantages that the scientist alludes when he talks of the spiritual value of science. He means pure science, the perception of these truths for their own sake, or, more accurately, for the sake of the change which they produce in our attitude toward life, the universe, each other. But science and revelation of scientific truth have no effect on our aptitude toward life, the universe, and each other. The mood of the mind of man, the temper of his outlook, his essential nature, this totality of spiritual reaction has nothing to do with the additional number of facts which science reveals. It would not alter the effective mood of civilized man if it happened that light were revealed as the radiation of particles rather than as waves in the ether, whatever that may mean. There may be 88 elements, or 880. The atom may be a kind of a solar system, or it may be a figure of speech. Life may be the function of a complicated molecular structure, or it may be an illusion. Whichever should turn out to be quote-unquote true, we should remain the same. Our only concern is with the exploitation of these things for physical advantages. And as far as that is concerned, it does not matter whether we have the truth or have hit on a method by conventional hypotheses. The Ptolemaic system of astronomy could permit the calculation of eclipses as accurately as the Copernican, quote, cycle in epicycle, orb in orb, unquote, works as effectively if the figures are closely enough watched as eclipses with the sun at one of the foci. For science is a game, a particular systemization, which might well be any other systemization. Indeed, despite the prodigious number of facts which science has unveiled, no new type of spiritual outlook has been evolved. Is the general consciousness or self-consciousness of the modern materialist different in effect from that of the civilized Stoic of more than 2000 years ago? If you substitute, quote, stress in the ether, unquote, for the pneuma, if you substitute the laws of gravitation or some electromagnetic formula for each other or for, quote-unquote, tension, will that alter your response to the universe? Science is so far a game, indeed, that, self-confessedly, it deals with symbols only. These are pure abstractions, the ion, the X-ray, the theory of relativity. We juggle with figures, with symbols, with arrangements. The things or truths or facts which are supposedly represented are utterly beyond our apprehensions. To take the simplest illustration, the Sun is 92 million miles from the Earth, the Moon a quarter of a million miles. Neither of these distances means anything to any human being. 1 million, or 10 million, or 1,000 billion. We have no spiritual reaction to any of these figures. They are symbols or counters in the game, in themselves intelligible to no one. Or to take the most significant of new scientific truths, the theory of relativity. Its application is only to the game or system. No man himself reacts to its implications. He uses it in the laboratory, in the observatory. He cannot bring it out. He cannot even lift it off the paper. Indeed, such a revolution was wrought in our conception of the universe by the exposition of the theory of relativity that if scientific truths had any spiritual significance, there should have been a religious revolution in its wake. Since the dawn of science, we have been blind to a tremendous and fundamental truth, an all-inclusive and inescapable truth, namely, that the motion of light rules all our measurements of time and space and mass, that the length of a line or of a period of time is nothing but a function of varying values. A terrific and sublime discovery, one might say. Yet, not only does it fail to make a particle of difference to the spiritual attitude of scientists toward the universe, they cannot even theoretically integrate it with a spiritual system. All the effective, quote-unquote, spiritual value of the theory of relativity is, quote, things are not what they seem, unquote. To this suspicion, which is a basic spiritual reaction of man to the universe, the theory of relativity adds nothing. At most, the theory of relativity is an additional but superfluous illustration. But I shall be told by the scientists, quote, it is not any individual scientific revelation which matters. What matters is the scientific outlook. As such, the conception of the universe as an ordered and harmonious process The elimination of the providential and accidental, the final and decisive removal of the thaumaturgical. Science means neither the theory of evolution, nor the discovery of the bacillus, nor the theory of relativity. Science means the cancellation of the inherited instinct errors. In brief, science is the substitution of reason for superstition." Unquote. But even at that variation, I contend that scientific pursuit of truth has given nothing to our knowledge of the ultimate secret of things. What the scientist would call the scientific outlook, in accordance with the above definition, has nothing to do with scientific study of phenomena. Men are by nature unthaumaturgical, or thaumaturgical in their reaction to the universe. Science, in its modern sense, does not make them unthaumaturgical. It is one of the basic qualities of human thought, this particular variety of outlook on the universe. I say it existed before the advent of what we denote under the restricted term of science. I say it would exist just as strongly in these types of men, though not a single discovery has been added to human knowledge of phenomena since the time of Aristotle. I say that though science should add 1,000,000 startling new revelations to its old ones, it would not increase or decrease the number of men who have the quote-unquote unthaumaturgical outlook. I referred to the Stoics and said that Stoicism contained as unthaumaturgical an outlook as any that modern science claims to have inspired. But even if this were not true, I should not change my opinion, for life at first hand taught me this view, and what I know of history I used only as an illustration. Life at first hand has taught me that knowledge of science has nothing to do with the superstitious or unsuperstitions, with the thaumaturgical or unthaumaturgical, with idealism or materialism. I have known thoroughly ignorant men who see life quite rationally, apparently untroubled by unconscious impulses, men who have quote-unquote the scientific outlook, without knowing or needing science. I have known thoroughly scientific men who are profoundly thaumaturgical, who are saturated with the spirit of superstition. It is not the knowledge of facts which changes the man. A man may believe in ghosts and yet not be superstitious. He may be merely mistaken. Another man may believe neither in ghosts nor in an anthropomorphic god, and yet be essentially of the superstitious type. It is not even a question of sophistication. I have known simple and primitive peasants, quite illiterate, who were as clearly rationalists and scientific in outlook as any professor inspired by a complete knowledge of the revealed mechanics of the world. I have known cultured city dwellers, rotten with sophistication, whose surface cynicism could not hide their subjection to the terror of invisible, unrevealable possibilities. Scientific genius is only the genius of the ingenious. Men who by their nature are materialists spend their energies in building intensely ingenious schemata, wherein the known facts of life constitute the sole material. But these ingenious schemata do not alter their nature with their shape or with the quantity of their material. The mechanics of the universe might be thus or thus. Things might work in this way or that way. It might be one formula or another formula. But the spirit of the thing is the same. For hundreds of years, capable minds have searched, constructed, reconciled. Their knowledge of the mechanism is infinitely greater than any man's knowledge 1,000 years ago. Yet men who know as little of these mechanics as was known 1,000 years ago have come to the same conclusion regarding the nature of the universe. There is in science a certain naivete, the belief that facts differ in their nature, the belief that a fact which is more difficult to unearth is therefore profounder than a fact which is obvious. The belief that a microbe, because it needs a microscope to reveal it, touches truth more deeply than the flea, which can be seen with the naked eye. Yet a fact is not more valuable for being difficult of access any more than a thought is more profound by having been made obscure. In the end, it comes to this: science, which is the accumulation of literal fact, hopes that the accumulation of facts will reveal the nature of fact. Science seems to believe that some facts are of a different order from other facts, going nearer to the sources of nature of things. This is untrue. All facts are on the same plane. Facts are not explanatory, but expository, and what they expose is of the same nature or material as that which we know without science. To expect facts to reveal the nature of facts is to expect the microscope to reveal the nature of the microscope. You can examine one microscope by means of another, but its nature or secret is not accessible to this mode of examination. It is of a different order. The chain of facts is everywhere uniform. When you know 1 inch of this chain, you have learned as much as you can learn from a mile. If the chain of causes and effects, fact related to fact, is infinitely long, any length of it is equally insignificant. 1,000 years is not nearer to eternity than a moment of time. There is, indeed, a certain vulgarity in the appeal to quantity. It is the democratic vulgarity, the belief that 1 million mediocre people have more spiritual significance than one mediocrity, that the size affects quality, that 1,000 new facts mean more than 100 old facts. There is in all this even the vulgarity of provincialism and cockney fashionableness, the belief that the latest is the best. But vulgarity is most patent in the common assertion that science is of a spiritual value because it reveals the wonders of the universe. So marvelous a structure, they say, rouses our astonishment and our reverence. Quote, the glory of God's house, unquote, and, quote, the infinite wisdom of his ways, unquote. Quote, science leads to religion because it teaches us both our own insignificance and the amazing cleverness of creation, unquote. I hold this view to be patently vulgar because it is an appeal to headlines, recourse to stimuli of the advertiser for the benefit of a stupid and jaded public. The thinking man needs no scientist to teach him the wonder of creation. He needs neither a telescope nor a microscope in order to see God, nor do formulae teach him the nature of God. Life itself, being the staggering wonder of mere existence, fills completely, crams beyond all possibility of addition, the faculty of astonishment and bewilderment in the sensitive man. Those to whom existence has become commonplace by familiarity, or who have never been smitten prostrate by the riddle of existence, need a crescendo succession of quote-unquote shockers to touch their brutish minds. They didn't know the marvel of the universe until they learned of electricity, but now that electricity is as commonplace as sunlight, they need a theory of relativity, and when that is played out as an advertising stunt for the ingenuity of the Almighty, they will need something else. Such vulgarity in scientists is not a whit different from the vulgarity of city mobs, which crow with astonishment when first they see an electric light, but afterwards smile pityingly at those who manifest astonishment. The man of mass mistakes impudent familiarity for understanding. Because he uses the electric car, the telephone, and the telegraph every day, he imagines that he is wiser than the barbarian who has never known of them. If at all, he is less wise, being too impotent to know his own ignorance. The fool that saith in his heart, There is no God, is the city fool, to whom nothing is wonderful any more, and those who do not know wonder do not know God. Is it not significant that the greatest human cry of wonder, the Bible, was the utterance of men who knew nothing concerning the Plesiosaurus, the amoeba, the nebula of Orion, Mendeleev's tables, Bode's law, the theory of quanta? In them the marvel of existence shocked like a clash of cymbals. The echoes of that first, fresh amazement still put to shame the sophisticated stammering of this wise age. Have all the revelations of science brought just a single utterance like that of Job? Though a man should master all the ingenuities of science, though he should double and treble them, though he should know all the workings of his own body and that of stellar systems, the past and future of all life should lie all open before him. Can he say or feel more than this? Can science even add anything to skepticism and doubt? Shall he who suspects that all life is a phantasm, perception itself the shadow of a shadow, and our very whispers to ourselves the 10 times tampered with instruments of things which are not ourselves, shall he that suspects that between himself and himself, himself speaking and himself listening, himself thinking and himself thought of, there looms world without end, system within system, aberration within aberration, shall such a one be rendered more doubtful because the sky is not an inverted bowl above our heads, because disease is carried not by demons but by invisible fleas? If the whole is insecure, does the double insecurity of a part make any difference? If all is illusory, does it matter that there were particular little illusions within the general illusion? If we suspect the very instrument of our perception, if we doubt our senses and our thoughts, if we doubt our very doubts, and in the end, from a frantic hunting of protean shadows, relapse into utter silence and impotence, with what additional impotence is to be derived from the correction of unscientific errors? The world's wonder, the world's doubt, the terror and illusion of life, these things lie patent to the naked eye. Life at first hand teaches everything. The blind cannot see even through a microscope. What then is science, and wherein lies its lure? Why are men drawn to its service? Why do the best and ablest give up their life to its pursuit? Science, which can be of no ultimate value in bringing us nearer to the roots of life, to Godhead and its secrecies. Science is a game, a convention. The charm of science is the charm of Gentile life. The ultimate life does not matter. Within the system there is a lyric grace of rhythm and harmony. The scientific development of your Western world is an inevitable consequence of your nature. It is inevitable that you should worship science, because your very skepticism is the substitution of one set of illusions for another, the adoption of one set of conventions in the place of another. You are bound to find quote-unquote spiritual value in science because you do not want ultimate spiritual value, only the spiritual value of immediate lyric enjoyment. You who worship gods instead of God must naturally worship science. Science is merely idol worship. For icons, instruments. For incantations, formula. The palpable, the material, the enjoyable. Science is not a serious pursuit. Your grave professors of chemistry, astronomy, physics, your Nobel Prize winners are but bald or bearded schoolboys playing mental football for their own delight and the delight of spectators. Science, then, is an art, though its technique is of so peculiar a nature as to divide it from all other arts, but we most easily recognize it as an art because the true scientist takes an artistic delight in science. And because your science is not serious, we Jews have never achieved in it any peculiar preeminence. We have our few exceptions. We can master as well as you the system and the scheme, but we lack the spiritual urge, the driving joy, the illusion that this is the all in all. We know nothing of science for science's sake, as we know nothing of art for art's sake. We only know of art for God's sake. If there is art or beauty in our supreme production, the Bible, it is not because we sought either. The type of the artist is alien to us, and just as alien is the delight of the artist. The artist is one who seeks beauty, goes out of his way to find her, but the Hebrew prophet, who wrote so beautifully, did not go out of his way to find God. God pursued him and caught him, hunted him out and tortured him, so that he cried out. Until this day, we have no artists in your sense. Such art as we have created has been the byproduct of a fierce moral purpose. Art and science, this is your Gentile world, a lovely and ingenious world. Kaleidoscopic, graceful, bewilderingly seductive, a world, all its best, of lovely apparitions, banners, struggles, triumphs, gallantries, noble gestures, and conventions. But not our world, not for us Jews. For such field of the cloth of gold delights, we lack imagination and inventiveness. We are not touched with this vigor of productive playfulness. Under duress we take part in the ringing melee, and give an indifferently good account of ourselves, but we have not the heart for this world of yours.